Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is Augie of the Blago Blabber podcast. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode. It's a snowy night in Toronto. Very cold. This is this week's This Week in Sports episode, I guess, if you want to call it. Gonna jump into it right away. Super Bowl. Tom Brady. What's this, like number 7? So basically, Casey had a very good season, to say the least. Were they like 14-2? Very good season. Patrick Mahomes balled out again. But there were so many of those games that maybe they should have lost. That they kind of, just squeaked by, comeback wins. And I'm someone who always feels that when you have so many of those games throughout the season, it's going to bite you in the ass in the playoffs. Or sooner or later. It doesn't have to be in the playoffs. And that's what happened to them. I understand that their offensive line wasn't healthy, which was a big part of them losing. I think I predicted 37-20 on last week's episode. So I was just a bit off. And the wrong team. So it just kind of caught up to them. All those victories that they kind of had, come from behind wins. And man, this makes me wonder, would my Bills have put up a bigger fight? Probably, right? I mean, it's hard to... 9 points scored, that's incredible. That offense over there. KC, crazy. Absolutely crazy. But Tom Brady was, again, he wasn't spectacular, but he was good enough to get the job done. And that's all you really kind of want from him at this point in time in his career. Super Bowl number 7, all the guys that he had asked for the team to bring in, well, not all. He definitely had something to do with Gronk coming in, obviously AB. But Leonard Fournette, man, everyone who they signed this season, for in some guy's case, halfway through the season, performed very well. There's some guys who didn't get targets, who didn't get catches, like Scotty Miller. That defense is crazy. It's going to be interesting. This offseason is going to be interesting because a lot of guys are due to get paid. And it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. Who stays and who goes. I'm thinking that, most of them will stay, but, it's weird. Sometimes you win and you say all the right things after it. When people ask you, are you going to resign? Of course, what's that guy going to say when you ask him if he's going to resign 3 days after he wins the Super Bowl? Of course he's going to say I want to resign. He's not going to say, oh no, I'm going to look, I'm definitely going to leave, or I'm going to look at other offers. I mean, they might say I'm going to look at other offers, but usually they're going to say, yeah, I want to resign. We have a great thing going. We can win another 3 or 4 and stuff like that. But it's going to be interesting to see. A lot of money is going to be thrown at the free agent that they have on their roster. And it's going to be very interesting. Very interesting to see what happens. Godwin, I believe, is a free agent. And they have a bunch of guys on the defensive side of the ball, which is like their bread and butter, like their outstanding defensive team. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of happens with that. And the day after, whenever they had like the things on the boat, I guess the celebration, I don't really want to call it a parade. It's not really a parade. And Tom Brady, getting drunk. Skip Bayless made a good point, actually. Skip Bayless is like the ultimate Tom Brady fan. It's like it's the first time we've seen Tom Brady just like a normal guy just out and drinking, hammered out of his mind. Probably doesn't know where he is. But it's like the first time we've seen that. And I don't know. I don't watch too many parades, so I don't know if that's true or not. But I assume it is because thinking back in my head, like there's always parade moments that, moments that happen in parades where you're like, oh, I remember that. I don't ever remember Tom Brady being drunk. I remember last year's KC when they're driving on the bus and people are throwing beers and stuff, and Marc Gasol chugging a bottle of wine. I don't know how the heck he did that. I can't even chug a glass of wine. But he did that, and that's another stand-up moment. And JR with his shirt off for the Cavs and stuff like that. So there's always moments that kind of stick out. And obviously Tom Brady throwing the the Lombardi Trophy from boat to boat, stuff like that. So very interesting. KC side, they just got to get Mahomes healthy. Like, that offense is still crazy. Like, J.J. Watt is a free agent. Man, if they could get J.J. Watt on that defense, I highly doubt it. But if they could get him, man, they're going to be good again. I mean, they're going to be contending again. They're going to be contending for years. As long as Mahomes is the quarterback, it's going to be crazy. But, like, the Buccaneers shut down everything. They shut down Kelsey. They shut down Hill. And once you shut down those two guys, those are the two main weapons apart from Mahomes. They're going to have a tough time scoring points. Easier said than done. Because Hill's burst of speed is crazy. Never seen anything like it. And I mentioned this on the last one that I did. And the Buccaneers stopped everything and anything. And there's always, I haven't looked at it in recent years, but there's always that curse that, one of the two teams that makes the Super Bowl doesn't even make the playoffs the following year. I know that was a thing for a few years. I don't know if that still exists. Who was in the Super Bowl last year? KC, and off the top of my head, I can't even remember. But yeah, that's a very interesting thing. And it's kind of like the Madden curse, I guess. Guys who are on the Madden cover don't have good seasons the following year. So it's kind of like that, I guess you can sort of say. But yeah, I mean, KC will be back. And I think if Buccaneers even lose their defensive guys or their free agents, they're just going to re-up with the guys who are probably even better. So it's not really much to worry about. I mean, I expect for them to sign most of them. So yeah, that's the Super Bowl, I guess. The next topic I want to talk about was Derrick Rose trade. I did a little thing on YouTube about it going back. It's actually one of my better posts. Not to toot my own horn, but yeah. Look, Dennis Smith Jr. was a guy who wasn't getting playing time. He went to the G League. He wanted to get at least some playing time, and then he gets traded. I think this is going to be his last. If he doesn't produce here, Detroit's going to be his last stop in the NBA, and he's going to be destined for Europe or China. Hopefully not. Hopefully he stays. That's just not. I just don't like guys taking. Not that I don't like guys taking that path, but he's a high pick, right? So you want to see him do well. I think he was 9th. So you want to see him do well. You want to see him hopefully get some more minutes because he got nothing in New York. And Detroit's kind of a weird team. They just have a bunch of dudes on the team. It's like 7 guys who are over 6'10", and feels like everyone else is like a point guard. So it's an interesting roster. I think he has this year, and then he has a player option next season. So he's actually on the team with Josh Jackson, a guy that I was always big on, and I still am. I'm not giving up on Josh Jackson. But he was in the same draft class, 2017, I believe, 4th overall. And, he went from Phoenix to Memphis, and now he's with Detroit. I actually wanted Toronto to really get him. So this is kind of like his last stop. And, hopefully he gets the minutes to prove that he can still be an NBA player and produce. As I said, I want all guys who are in the NBA to kind of stay in the NBA and carve out a spot for themselves. And I hope he does. He knows what he has to do. When he plays, he has to, do well, score, rebound, defend. Especially with Dwayne Casey there. Dwayne Casey he, used to preach a lot of defense from Toronto. So if you're good, he's going to give you minutes, man. But if you're not, he's not going to force you into the starting lineup. Derrick Rose, back to New York, reunited with Tom Thibodeau. Really like the trade from New York's perspective because he brings veteran leadership, some stability at the position with a lot of maybe not so much young guys, but guys who are still trying to prove themselves, like Alfred Payton, and then you got RJ Barrett, if you want to count him. I don't count him as a point guard, but he's a guard to me. And then you got Austin Rivers, and at some point we're going to get to the odd man out here, which is probably going to be Austin Rivers, and New York will ultimately get something back for him because he's a shooter, and we all know teams love shooters. So they will get something back for him, whether that's a rotation player, maybe a late first round pick, second. It all depends, honestly. It depends how desperate GMs get. Maybe Dallas comes calling because they need guards on that team. But yeah, I really like the addition of Derrick Rose. He's someone who they can go to him in the clutch when the game's within a point or two. He has experience. He's a former MVP, man. He was one of the best players at that time when he was at his peak. He's one of the best players, not just in the East, in the entire league. So he can be a go-to guy when the game's really close. And he's going to provide veteran leadership for a lot of those guys there, not just the guards. There's a lot of guys who are young, trying to prove themselves. You still have Knox there. You have Toppin. You have Manuel Quickley. I didn't even mention Manuel Quickley as a guard, but he's there. RJ and Peyton, as I said. So there's a lot of guys there, and I really like the pick, or I really like the trade for New York. And once again, he's just reunited with Tom Thibodeau. Tibbs knows him probably better than anyone else. Tibbs probably knows him better than Derrick Rose's family. He's spent that much time with him. So yeah, I really like the pick from New York's perspective. And they've been kind of a surprise team, if you want to say. I always, like at the season, prior to the season, if you asked me, where do you think New York is going to stack up in the East? I would have told you, honestly, they can fight for a playoff spot. Like if they can get to that, that play-in, I think that's a successful season to them. Whether they get in the playoffs or not, anything after that is a bonus. If they get in as the 8th seed, house money, man. House money. Young team. They're going to get the experience. Not too much is expected of them this year if they make playoffs. If they can get a game as an 8th seed, man, that does wonders for their confidence. And secondly, it does wonders for, guys who are free agents and looking for someone to sign. Once you have a core and say, hey, you know what, look, we're willing to sign you. This is what we want going forward. These are the players that we have. You're going to be a big part. Because whoever signs here is going to be a big part of what they're doing. Because they don't really have a star player. Like, sure, Julius Randle's here, but apart from that, if you can get a guy better than Julius Randle, which you probably could, no disrespect to you, I love Julius Randle's game, but, they're number one in defense and they're like last in offense. So totally different parts of the spectrum. It's almost like the Nets, except the opposite, actually, because New York is really good at defense and they don't really score that much. But it shows you a lot. A young team like that gets out and plays defense, and a lot of that is thanks to Tibbs. Obviously, he's a defensive coach. So yeah, New York is definitely a team to keep an eye on. If they can just keep fighting and keep every team within arm's length for that eighth seed, they have a great chance of making the playoffs, or at least getting into that, like I said, playing game. Kyle Lowry trade rumors. Ooh. Kyle Lowry sold his house in Toronto. I'm someone who always says, I jump to conclusions. As soon as I hear players sold a house in the city where he plays in, although that's not really the case with Kyle Lowry this year, I'm like, yeah, he's gone. It's like he can't buy a house in that same city again. But I had time to think about it, and look, it honestly makes so much sense. He's in the final year of his contract. Toronto's not going to re-sign him, with Van Vliet here, and it's going to be the future point guard, I guess, if you can say that. So he's not going to be here. He's not playing in Toronto this season, so you might as well sell the house, right? Doesn't make any sense to keep it, which I highly doubt he even resigns for a year. He's 34, 35 years of age, maybe one more run at a ring. He can still be, depending on the team, he could still be, he's a starting point guard for Toronto, even though Toronto's under 500, but still a starting point guard. Worst case scenario, he comes off the bench for someone. And yeah, so I think people I was a part of the people that jumped to conclusions, sold his house, which means he's leaving right away. And it's kind of true. He's probably not going to be back. So the teams interested, Clippers are obviously going to pop up as one of the teams interested. They have no first round draft picks for the next 20 years. So, a package back from them would probably include something like, I was going to say Ty Lue. Lou Williams. Probably Patrick Beverley. Zubats, I don't know if they'd be willing to trade because he's a solid big man, off the bench for them. He fits their style perfectly. So he's really good in that system. So I don't know if he would. If they would trade him, then that's cool too, because we need centers. No picks, so he's probably a second rounder. Denver would be interesting too. And I think if Kyle Lowry went to the Clippers, let's say before the trade deadline or on the trade deadline, ultimately he could re-sign there. I think if he goes to a team like Denver, I think he'd probably be a rental. And then, next season, it's whatever. He goes wherever he wants. If he wants to take a pay cut, he can go play somewhere else. But Denver would be an interesting team. So that'd probably be a trade centered around Gary Harris. I know he was, mentioned in trades this summer. But the question is, does Toronto really need guards again? I guess they do if they trade Lowry, because Malachi Flynn is playing with the G League team. So you only got Terrence Davis, and Terrence Davis isn't a point guard. So you only got Fred VanVleet. So actually, Gary Harris is a shooting guard. So he's kind of like Norm Powell too, I guess. So like what happens with Norm and stuff like that, and we could get into that later. What about San Antonio? Just because his buddy DeMar is there, although DeMar could end up getting traded as well. Although Spurs are actually doing really good this season. I think they were 6th or 7th last time I checked, which is like 2-3 days ago. But like standings change daily because there's so many teams within like a game of each other. And then one team has a corona outbreak, and then everyone else catches up to them, and all of a sudden they're 11th. So yeah, Denver and like New York or Denver and the Clippers are kind of the first two teams that that I thought about. And then I thought, like, what about Philly, where he's from? I don't know if Masai would trade within the division. I know he fleeced New York a million years ago for Andrea Bargnani, but I don't know if he would do that. And Boston's a weird team. I was just talking to my friend about this earlier. Like, they have so many guys that they don't even use, like Neesmith and like Carson Edwards and a bunch of other guys. And Ojeley's actually survived a long time in Boston. So I don't think he would trade within the division to Boston, for example. So I said Philly, and then I went to Boston. So Boston, I don't think that would happen. And Philly, too. I don't know if that really makes much sense. What does Philly have to offer, like, in terms of matching contracts? Like, they're not going to send Ben Simmons. So I don't know if that makes sense either. So you'd probably headed out somewhere west. And like I said, Clippers should be the one team that very interested in Lowry. And, you reunite Larry with Leonard and Ibaka again. And, really good friends. They know each other's games, so there wouldn't be much of a adjustment period, I guess, if you want to say. You kind of hit the ground running, and I guess started with the Clippers. But yeah, those are the teams. And obviously, another team I should mention is Dallas, too. Dallas has struggled a lot this season. I really thought that they would be challenging for, second, third spot in the West, but they've kind of slowed down this year. Luka's been really good, but everyone else has kind of stumbled. Like, Hardaway will have 2 really good games, and he'll have 6 stinkers in a row. Same with Porzingis, who's a lot of people expected a lot from him. Me, I'm not really a Porzingis guy, so it's whatever for me. But Kleber too, he has good games. So yeah, losing Seth Curry really kind of messed him up, and he goes to Philly, and Philly's having like this crazy season. So yeah, Dallas would be a very interesting team, I think. Then you look at maybe Miami. That would probably involve Dragic in some capacity, although I believe he has to wait 3 months for his. You can't be traded within 3 months of signing a contract, so that will take some time too. And then there's so that's Kyle Lowry, and there's the J.J. Watt news that kind of broke on, I guess, yesterday, Friday. Released by the Texans, and I expect everyone to be involved in J.J. Watt talk, like the Packers and Seahawks and Chiefs and everyone, Buccaneers. So they're slowly starting to, get rid of those players that have been there for a long time, like Hopkins last offseason. Deshaun Watson is probably going to get traded on this offseason, and they're going to get a haul for him. J.J. Watt. Who knows what else happens. But that they're in a bit of a mess there, to say the least. And they're in the same state. They're kind of competing with the Cowboys as well. So yeah, that's another interesting situation to watch if you're obviously a football person. You know more about it than me. I just thought I should mention JJ Watt news because JJ Watt is like, or at least was one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He was kind of like Aaron Donald before Aaron Donald, I guess, which makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that's another topic to kind of follow. That's really it for this week's episode. I'm gonna try to get on the airways a little bit more. Whenever something happens, what I try to do is I try to, incorporate YouTube into my stuff as much as possible. I try to do little pieces on YouTube. Like recently I've done, I look at the 2020 NBA draft class and like what guys have done thus far and things like that. And just minor trades that I can, that takes 5 minutes to talk about, like the Derrick Rose thing. I try to do that stuff in YouTube. So I try to keep it as, it's not really as even as possible, like 50-50, because I'm doing podcasts once a week, which is just this segment right now, but I'm going to try to do more. Now I might drop, a little Red Star piece because they play Milan on Thursday. Might try to drop that on YouTube and on here. So that'll look out for that on Wednesday. So thank you guys for listening. Let me know what you guys want to hear, especially to my close friends who I know listen to the podcast all the time. I could see by the views on each podcast. Let me know what you guys want to hear. And obviously I've said this on my Instagram before, but if you want to do a podcast, we could do from 2 different locations. It's not an issue. You just got to have headphones. We can record. Let me know what you want to talk about. We can prepare prior to the show. What to talk about and, what to cover and stuff like that. And we could do that. That's not an issue. Sometimes it's just, I can't talk for like 50 minutes. So, my podcast will probably be anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, or sometimes maybe a little bit longer. But yeah, just let me know if any of you guys want to just kick it and talk about sports. I'm always here. So yeah, take care, guys. See you again next week.